The hammer rang like a bell in a church that knew better than to pray. Rowan Creed stood in the gutted hallway of the Golden Star, sleeves rolled, sweat darkening the brim of his hat. The saloon had burned just after first frost. No bodies, no smoke-choked souls, only black rafters, and a rumour that wouldn't sit still. Now the walls were stripped to lath and ash, and Eliza Thorn was driving nails with a temper that matched the sunrise. "Hold that plank steady, rancher," she said, breath ghosting in the cool morning, "or I'll put a hole through your boot to teach it loyalty." Rowan pinned the cedar with his palm, smiling despite the ache in his shoulders. "My boots don't learn, Eliza. Only I do." Another strike. The wall shivered. Dust sifted down like flour over a grave. Somewhere in the empty saloon, a piano key sang a single dead note whined through broken things. Silas Vane watched from the doorway, polished as a new coin. "You're costing me daylight with your chatter," he said. "The stage from Abilene arrives by week's end. I want lights, whiskey, and the whistle of money." Eliza didn't look at him. "We'll have it ready." She drove one more nail and forced the plank home. If the walls quit complaining. Rowan felt it too, a hollow echo. Not wood upon wood, but wood against something buried. He tapped the lath with his knuckles. The sound came back wrong, like a secret returning to sender. "Don't," Silas said, silky turning steel. "You break what you fix, I dock your pay." Eliza slid the hammer into her belt. "You can't dock a woman you pay in promises." She nodded at Rowan. "Fetch the pry bar." Rowan fetched it. The metal was cold as creek water. He wedged it, pulled, and the plank bowed, sighed, then lifted off the studs, coughing a century of splinters into the light. Behind it lay a pocket of darkness where the wall ought to have been solid. Rowan reached in with 2 fingers and drew out a strip of leather, stiff with age, stamped with an emblem he recognized, the serpent and star brand of the county registry. "Papers." "Official once." Silas stepped forward, palm up. "Mine." Eliza blocked him with one shoulder, easy as closing a door. Rowan found it. Rowan thumbed the strap open. Inside lay a ledger wrapped in oilcloth, the edges dark as if they'd sipped a long draught of smoke. He unrolled it slow. Names marched across the page in a neat, unafraid hand. Deeds, land transfers, odd notations, tallies beside certain families, as if they were cattle on a tally sheet. At the bottom of one page sat a mark like a black star fallen into mud. Rowan read the signature under it and felt his jaw go tight. Sheriff Amos Black. "Give that here," came a voice behind them, as steady as a grave marker. They turned. Sheriff Black filled the doorway, hat-brim shadowing eyes that missed little. A tin star flashed once and went dull. Dust clung to his boots as if it had claimed him already. "Afternoon," Black said, though morning hadn't finished. "Mr. Vane." "Miss Thorn." His attention touched Rowan and stayed. "Creed, Sheriff." Rowan closed the ledger, set it against his thigh. "We're doing repairs. If the law wants to help, I've got a broom. Needs an honest hand." Silas Vane's smile never changed, but his voice shifted an octave toward warning. "Sheriff, I was just about to ride for you. Seems a portion of my wall held more county business than my counter." Black stepped into the room. His boots made no sound, which Rowan distrusted. "Papers put where they shouldn't be," the sheriff said. "Happens when fire takes a place and wind helps itself." Eliza said soft, "Fire don't tuck ledgers to bed." Black regarded her the way a snake regards a tune. "You sing on Saturdays, Miss Thorn. Let the law sing weekdays." He held out his hand. "Ledger." Rowan didn't move. The oilcloth felt heavier than it should, like a Bible that knew a man's true name. "We'll return it after we finish reading," Rowan said. "That's not how it works." "That's not how it should have worked," Rowan replied, nodding at the serpent and star brand. "These marks say land was moved under night. Families I know. The Morans. The Cruz parcel by the arroyo. Signatures they wouldn't have set to paper unless a barrel watched." Eliza shot him a quick look. "Don't push it." But her chin stayed high, which meant push it a little. Black's mouth thinned. Accusation is a river, Creed, easy to step into, hard to cross without mud. Rowan eased a breath. Maybe, but I got mud on me already. He raised his scarred knuckle. From digging fence posts my father swore were ours. Then a paper said they weren't. Silas's voice floated like cigar smoke. Sheriff, this is theatre. We have work. Take the ledger, and let's be done. Not quite. A new voice called from the boardwalk. Keeley Moran stood there with a stack of school books and the look of a woman who had stayed up late with a candle and a question. 2 rivers lingered behind her, the wind making a ribbon of his hair. I heard hammering, Keeley said. And I heard my family name from the street. That ledger, may I see it? She softened it with a smile that asked permission the way a judge asks for quiet. Black turned, annoyed at how the town had taken an interest. No, Eliza cut in. Then read it out loud, Sheriff. Spare us your dust-choked mercy. 2 rivers spoke for the first time. Walls, remember, wind carries what they say. If you bury something in wood, the desert keeps it until a hand comes brave or foolish enough to fetch it. Rowan looked at the small black star in the ledger's margin. It sat beside a line marked Golden Star Deed, Transfer Parcel Consolidated Sheriff Present. The hair on his arms lifted. This saloon is built on what didn't belong to it, he said. Paper says so. Fire tried to erase that and failed. Sheriff, tell me I'm wrong. Black's gaze rested on Rowan's face, travelled to the ledger, then lowered to the hollow of the wall. He reached past Rowan, fingers brushing the old lath, and pressed. Something clicked. A thin panel inside slid aside with a throat-clearing scrape, revealing a deeper niche no carpenter would have left on purpose. The smell that came out wasn't rot. It was colder. Iron, long-cooled, old smoke, and the mineral hush of kept silence. Black withdrew a small canvas bag from the niche and set it on a table frame. He untied it. No coins spilled. Instead, a handful of brass tokens rolled like tiny suns, each stamped with a serpent wrapped around a star. Silas leaned in too fast, greed flashing, then gone. House markers, he said lightly. Good for drinks. A novelty from before the fire. 2 rivers tilted his head, listening to something no one else heard. Not drinks. Keeley pointed at the back of one token. Numbers. Coordinates. Padre Cruz keeps parish maps. He'll know. Enough, Sheriff Black said, the word low and heavy. He swept the tokens back into the pouch and reached for the ledger. Rowan's hand tightened. Eliza, Rowan said without looking. Go fetch Padre Cruz from the mission, and bring whatever he keeps locked under the altar. Silas's genial air cracked. You'll do no such thing. Eliza had already stepped toward the door. Black's palm moved to his holster, slow, deliberate, not drawing, just resting there like a clock's hand at midnight. Rowan met his eyes. He let his other hand fall near the pry bar. Not a gun, but iron is iron when a room decides to hold its breath. Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it the long, thin clang of a church bell from the mission hill. Then the wall itself spoke. A second panel inside the niche loosened, easing forward under its own tired weight. It tipped, fell, and broke open on the floorboards. And what spilled out wasn't bone or coin, but a strip of painted canvas, an old map edges charred, center intact, lines spidering across the town like veins. At the map's heart, in careful ink, a black star drawn where the golden star stood. Sheriff Black stared at it a heartbeat too long, as if recognizing his own handwriting. Rowan saw that flicker and knew. Sheriff, he said, voice quiet as a well, tell us what you buried in these walls. Black's hand lifted from his holster, and the door behind them creaked as someone none of them had heard enter, said, almost kindly, he won't, because if he does, the first truth will be his last. The stranger who spoke leaned against the doorframe as if he owned the air in the room. A tall figure, dust-coated but clean-eyed, with a Winchester slung casual across his shoulder. His hat brim shadowed a grin that had no warmth. Rowan Creed set the ledger down slow. Eliza Thorn froze with her hand on the door latch. Silas Vane's smile twitched, then returned, practiced as ever. Sheriff Amos Black didn't move, though his fingers brushed the butt of his revolver like it might reassure him. The man tipped his hat. "Name's Calder Boone. Some of you might recall it from places best left burned down." His voice had the scrape of gravel dragged across tin. "I rode 2 days hard when I heard a wall in this saloon started speaking. I figured if walls talk, they're talking about me." Keeley Moran clutched her books tight, eyes flicking between Boone and the tokens on the table. Two Rivers shifted his stance, quiet as weather. Padre Cruz entered just then, called by Eliza before the stranger appeared. He paused at the threshold, cross in hand, eyes narrowing like he'd seen Boone before, perhaps in confession, perhaps in a nightmare. Rowan broke the silence. "You knew what was in the wall." Boone chuckled low. "Knew? Son, I carved it. Not with my hands, maybe, but with the blood money that built this town." He nodded toward Silas. "And with the silk-tongued man who brokered every deal." Silas hissed, "Careful, Boone. You're drunk on dust." "Drunk on remembering," Boone corrected. He strolled to the table, tapped the map with one finger. "This star marks more than a saloon. It marks where the ledger of sins was buried so no one could trace who sold the county one piece at a time." Sheriff Black's jaw hardened. "You don't know what you're saying." Boone's grin widened. "I know enough. I was there when the sheriff swapped signatures with a pistol on the table. I was there when Padre Cruz turned away, claiming the parish bell drowned the cries. And I was there when Silas bought silence with whiskey and women's songs." Eliza's face tightened. "Lies." But the tremor in her voice betrayed doubt. Boone's words weren't the ramble of a drifter, they were hooks catching in old scars. Rowan stepped closer. "Why now, Boone? If you knew all this, why ride back when the saloon's half dead?" Boone shrugged, but his eyes gleamed. "Because, Creed, the desert never forgets. And because the one family left unbroken, yours, still holds the last parcel not signed away. Your father's land, the one patch this ledger couldn't steal." He leaned in, voice soft, cruel. "The one patch that fire will take next if you don't play the game." Rowan felt the room tilt. His father's ranch, dusty, fenced, stubborn as bone, was more than land. It was promise. It was the only thing that proved his blood had weight in the desert. Padre Cruz cleared his throat. His voice trembled but held. "I did not sign away my flock. If those papers bear my mark, they are forged." Boone's laughter was sharp as a breaking branch. "Maybe forged, maybe borrowed while you were too busy polishing chalices. Doesn't matter now. What matters is this saloon sits atop the secret, and I've come to dig it out before someone else buries it deeper." Two Rivers finally spoke. "Secrets in walls do not rest. They hunt those who place them." Boone eyed him, respect flickering. "Wise words. But I don't mind being hunted. I'm faster on the draw than most ghosts." Rowan's hand hovered near his belt, not on steel, but on will. "You're saying Sheriff Black and Silas built this town on stolen dirt?" "I'm saying," Boone replied, "the sheriff carries law like a lantern with no flame, and Silas carries ambition sharp enough to cut throats without spilling blood." Silas's voice dropped low, venom curling. "You rode back to die, Boone. You think spitting poison earns you a place at my table." Boone leaned closer until his breath misted Silas's cheek. "No. I rode back to flip the table." Before Rowan could blink, Boone's hand darted not for his rifle, but for the pouch of tokens. He snatched it, spilling brass markers across the half-built floor. They rattled into shadows like scattered teeth. One rolled to Keeley's boot. She stooped fast, scooping it up before anyone noticed. Sheriff Black finally moved, gun half-drawn, but Boone stepped back, rifle swinging to cover the room in a sweep. "Easy now. No need to decorate these new walls with lead." "Not yet." The air thickened. Rowan saw Eliza's jaw set. Keeley's eyes bright with something secret, Padre Cruz clutching his cross as if it might strike lightning. Two Rivers shifted slightly, a hunter waiting for the wind to tell him when. Boone backed toward the door, pouch in hand. "Read the map if you want. Chase the truth if you dare. But remember truth, don't ride alone. It drags death in its stirrups." He stepped into the street, whistling a tune that didn't belong to any church or saloon. The sound faded, but the tension remained, coiled tight. Rowan looked at the sheriff. "What's the game here, Black?" Black holstered his gun, voice calm, eyes unreadable. Game ended the moment he walked in. Now, it's war. Outside a horse neighed, and Boone's laughter echoed against the boarded walls of the Golden Star. And in the silence after, Keeley slipped the single brass token she'd hidden into her skirt pocket, her thumb brushing the strange numbers etched into its back. She didn't speak of it, not yet, but her eyes said she knew the game wasn't war. It was worse, because the numbers pointed somewhere, and she intended to follow. The night settled over the town like a lid on a boiling pot. The Golden Star's half-built walls whispered in the wind, carrying echoes of Boone's laughter long after his horse had vanished into the desert. Rowan Creed stayed behind with Eliza, hammering boards until sparks rose from the nails. Work was the only way to smother the heat in his chest. Sheriff Black had slipped into the dark with Silas Vane, their silhouettes swallowed by lamplight. Padre Cruz lingered by the bar frame, cross dangling, lips moving in a prayer. Even he didn't seem to believe. Keeley Moran sat alone at a workbench, a book open before her, but she wasn't reading. Her fingers traced the brass token hidden between the pages. Numbers, strange ones. She mouthed them silently, as if speaking them might unlock a door. Two Rivers leaned in the shadows near her, silent guardian. Finally, Rowan laid his hammer down. "We're patching holes, not fixing the rot," he muttered. Eliza wiped her brow. "So what do you plan, rancher? Tear every board off this place until the truth falls into your lap?" "Maybe." Rowan's eyes narrowed at the ledger on the table. "Or maybe ride after Boone before his trail turns cold." The saloon doors creaked. Silas strode back in, boots clicking like clock hands. "Boone's gone south. Let him. Men like him burn out fast." Rowan stepped forward. "And if he doesn't?" Silas smiled thin as a razor. "Then the sheriff and I will see to him. You, Creed, should keep to your fences. Boone spoke of your land for a reason. Don't give him more reason to notice you." Rowan bristled, but Eliza caught his arm. "Not here. Not now." Silas's gaze swept the room, lingering on Keeley. "And you, schoolteacher, keep your nose out of numbers. They'll cut you deeper than letters ever did." Keeley's book snapped shut. Her voice was calm. "Funny thing about numbers, Mr. Vane. They don't lie. Men do." For a moment, Silas's charm cracked. Then he tipped his hat and slipped out again, leaving the scent of cigar smoke and threat. Rowan turned to Keeley. "You found something." Her eyes darted to Two Rivers, who gave the smallest nod. She drew the token from her book, setting it on the table where the lantern light caught its etchings. "Coordinates," she whispered. "I think they point to the old Spanish well outside town. The one Padre keeps locked behind stone." Padre Cruz stiffened. "That well is sealed for a reason. Spirits linger there." "Spirits or secrets?" Keeley asked. Rowan picked up the token, weighing it in his hand. The numbers carved deep, deliberate. "If Boone wants it, we need to see it first." Two Rivers finally spoke. "Go by daylight. Night hides more than men." But Rowan shook his head. "Boone won't wait. Neither will I." Eliza crossed her arms. "Then I'm coming too. Someone needs to keep you from getting killed before you even see what's at the bottom." Padre Cruz raised his cross. "If you open what was sealed, you may not like what climbs out." Rowan looked at him steady. "Maybe. But the desert's already crawling with what your church couldn't keep down." They left under moonlight. The five of them, Rowan, Eliza, Keeley, Two Rivers, and Padre Cruz. Horses moved like shadows through the sage. The town lights shrank behind them, swallowed by distance. At the edge of the arroyo, the well stood, stones black with age, chains rusted across the mouth, padlocked with an iron cross. The air around it felt colder, as though the desert itself recoiled. Keeley held the token up. The numbers match. This is the place. Rowan dismounted, pried at the lock. It held fast. Eliza crouched, running her hand over the stones. These weren't laid by ranchers, too precise. Padre Cruz whispered Latin under his breath. Two Rivers bent close, pressing his ear to the earth. When he rose, his face was pale in the moonlight. "What did you hear?" Rowan asked. Two Rivers' eyes glimmered. "Drums, not of men alive." A sharp crack echoed from the ridge. A rifle shot. The padlock sparked and snapped clean off. Rowan spun, drawing his revolver. On the ridge above, Boone stood with his Winchester, smoke curling from the barrel. His grin was a white slash in the dark. "Go on, Creed," Boone called down. "Open it. See what your town's been built on. See what your sheriff bled to keep buried." The padlock lay broken at Rowan's feet. The well's chains sagged loose, whispering against stone. The air smelled of iron and secrets. Rowan met Eliza's eyes. She shook her head once, hard. But Keeley stepped forward, lantern raised, voice steady. "We came this far," she said. "We're opening it." The chains slid aside, rattling like bones. Rowan grasped the stone lid. Muscles straining, he heaved it back. The well yawned open, swallowing the lantern light. From its depths came not silence, but the scrape of something shifting below, something that had been waiting. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. The sound that rose from the well was not water, not wind. It was a hollow rasp, like a voice worn thin by years of silence. The five around the rim froze, their shadows stretching long in the moonlight. Boone's laughter carried from the ridge, wild and taunting, but Rowan Creed hardly heard it. His heart beat in his throat, steady as a drum. Eliza Thorn gripped his sleeve. "Close it! For God's sake, close it!" Keeley Moran leaned forward, lantern trembling in her hand. "No. Listen. It's not just noise. It's words." Padre Cruz crossed himself, muttering prayers, though his voice shook. "You court damnation, child." Two Rivers crouched low, palm against the earth. His eyes narrowed. "It is not spirit. It is stone moving. Something hidden below." Rowan slid his revolver back into its holster. He pulled a length of rope from his saddle, looping it around the well's lip. "If there's truth down there, I'll fetch it." Eliza seized his wrist. "And if it's death waiting?" Rowan met her eyes. "Then I'd rather meet it head-on than wait for it to ride into my land." From above, Boone shouted down, "Bold words, rancher, but I'll wager you won't come back whole." Rowan ignored him. He tied the rope around his waist, set his boots against the stone, and eased himself into the dark. The lantern light followed just far enough to paint the first few feet of rough wall. Below, the blackness yawned like a throat. The air grew colder with each step. Dust filled his lungs. 10 feet down, he felt the rope strain. 15 feet, the wall curved inward. Then his boots touched something solid, timbers laid crosswise, like a platform built to seal whatever lay beneath. "Rowan," Eliza's voice echoed from above. "What do you see?" He crouched, running his hand over the wood. Dry, brittle. He pressed, and one board gave way with a crack. Dust rained past his face. Beneath the planks, something glinted faintly. Rowan drew the shard free. Not gold, not silver, but brass, another token, larger than the others. Its serpent and star emblem gouged deep, and beneath it, letters burned into the metal. Black. The name made his gut tighten. Before he could call up, the timber below him groaned. A hollow chamber opened, and the platform sagged. Rowan shouted, clutching the rope as boards snapped and fell into darkness. Above, Eliza and 2 Rivers hauled hard. The rope burned Rowan's waist as he scrambled against the wall, boots searching for purchase. A rush of air surged up, cold and foul, as if the earth exhaled secrets it had kept too long. They dragged him out, coughing, token clenched in his fist. Eliza ripped the rope off him and threw it aside. "Fool!" she hissed, but her hands trembled with relief as she touched his shoulder. Rowan held up the brass token for them all to see. Sheriff Black's name, etched in the metal. Keeley's eyes widened. Proof. Proof he's tied to whatever's buried. Padre Cruz shook his head, pale as bone. No proof. Only curses. This is older than law, older than the sheriff. You stir the desert's wrath. Boone clapped slowly from the ridge. Bravo, Creed. You've got a knack for pulling skeletons out where they don't belong. His rifle gleamed in moonlight. Now hand over what you found. By Bix, by Dix, by Dix. Late. Boone. Rowan raised his revolver, steady despite the weight in his chest. Come down here and take it. The standoff stretched, the night thick as tar. Then another voice cut through the silence. Enough. Sheriff Amos Black rode from the west, his horse black as smoke. He dismounted slow, spurs kissing stone, eyes fixed on Rowan. The fire in his gaze was colder than the well. You meddled, Creed, he said, calm but sharp. That well was sealed for a reason. You've let rot back into the air. Rowan showed him the token. Your name's on this. Explain it. Black's hand hovered near his holster. Not here. Not in front of them. Keeley stepped forward, voice iron-strong. The truth belongs to the town, Sheriff. To all of us. Boone laughed. Let him talk. Let's hear how he weaves his lies into rope. Sheriff Black's eyes flicked from Boone to Rowan, then to the dark well behind them. His jaw tightened. You want the truth. It doesn't sleep in paper or brass. It sleeps in bones. And if you keep digging, Creed, you'll find more than you can bury. The night wind howled through the arroyo. The saloon map, folded in Rowan's saddlebag, rustled like it wanted to speak. Boone's grin widened, eager for blood. Rowan leveled his revolver. Then start talking, Sheriff, because the desert already woke up. Sheriff Black's hand dropped to his gun, and the night exploded in the crack of a single shot, though no one could yet tell whose finger had pulled the trigger. The shot echoed down the arroyo, loud as thunder, sending coyotes scattering into the sage. Dust hung in the moonlight. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Rowan Creed realized his revolver was still raised, his finger taut but clean of smoke. The echo belonged to Boone's rifle. A splinter of stone near Sheriff Black's boot smoked from the impact. Boone grinned from the ridge, his teeth catching the light. Just a warning, he called. Next one takes more than dirt. Black's eyes never left Rowan. You see now. His voice was quiet, but it carried. Boone wants the town undone. He'll tear it apart until only vultures remain. Rowan clenched his jaw. Boone didn't put your name on this token. He lifted the brass disc. You did. Eliza Thorn stepped between them, palms raised. Enough. You'll both kill each other before the truth ever sees daylight. Keeley Moran's hand closed tight around her lantern. Maybe that's what the sheriff wants, she murmured, half to herself. 2 Rivers tilted his head toward the ridge. He watches, like coyote. He waits for you to fight. Padre Cruz sank to his knees, whispering prayers, as if words alone could stitch the desert shut again. Boone raised his rifle once more. Tell you what, Creed. You want truth? Meet me at the old Spanish well at dawn, alone. Bring the ledger and the map. Leave the others behind. Rowan shouted back, You're standing at the well now. Boone's laugh was sharp as glass. Not this one, the real one. The one no priest dares mark on a parish map. Ask 2 Rivers he knows. All eyes turned to the Ute tracker. His expression was unreadable, but his silence was enough. Rowan felt his stomach tighten. "What's at this other well?" Two Rivers finally spoke. "A pit. Older than your fences. Older than this town. My people called it the Mouth. We sealed it with stone before your lawman even came." Padre Cruz's voice cracked. "And your people warned us never to open it." Boone tipped his hat. "Sunrise, Creed. Bring the papers, or your ranch burns before sundown." He swung onto his horse, and in a flurry of hooves, he vanished into the desert. The group stood in the silence he left behind. The broken chains on the well clinked in the wind. Eliza turned to Rowan, voice fierce. "You can't go. It's a trap." Rowan stared into the black mouth of the well. "Maybe. But if Boone's right, my land's next. I won't wait for smoke on the horizon." Sheriff Black holstered his revolver, his face carved from stone. "You'll hand me the ledger and the map, now." Keeley stepped forward, holding the lantern high. "No, you don't get to bury the truth twice." Black's eyes darkened. "Careful, schoolteacher." Rowan shoved the ledger into his saddlebag before the sheriff could grab it. "This comes with me. At dawn, I'll see Boone and the truth. If you stand in the way, Sheriff, you'll be standing against me." The sheriff's jaw worked, but he said nothing. He mounted his horse and rode into the dark, leaving only the echo of his spurs. Padre Cruz rose, his face pale. "Dawn will bring more than Boone. That place, it calls to those who are bound to it." Two Rivers nodded. "He speaks true. The mouth is never empty. It waits." Eliza gripped Rowan's arm. "Then we face it together. You're not riding into that desert alone." Rowan met her eyes, saw the fire there, the refusal to let him carry the weight by himself. He gave a slow nod. Keeley slipped her hand into her pocket, brushing the hidden token Boone hadn't seen. Its numbers pulsed in her mind like a heartbeat. She kept her secret close, though a part of her feared it might already be too late. The night wind shifted, carrying the faint toll of the mission bell, though no hand pulled its rope. Dawn was coming, and with it, the mouth. The first streaks of dawn painted the desert red, as if the sky itself bled before the day began. Rowan Creed rode at the head of the small band, hat low, the weight of the ledger dragging heavy in his saddlebag. Eliza Thorn rode beside him, her eyes sharp, every muscle taut as wire. Behind them, Keeley Moran held her lantern strapped to her horse, though the sun was climbing. Two Rivers and Padre Cruz trailed, silent, as if words might summon something they could not put back. The path wound toward a canyon choked with mesquite. The air grew colder, though the sun was rising. Rowan felt it first in his bones. A wrongness, like the desert itself wanted them gone. Two Rivers raised a hand. "The mouth waits ahead." Eliza leaned forward in her saddle. "Looks like any other canyon." Two Rivers shook his head. "Stone remembers. It breathes different here." They dismounted at the canyon's throat. The rocks loomed high, casting shadows too long for the hour. Keeley drew the brass token from her pocket, the one Boone hadn't seen. She matched its numbers against the etchings in the canyon wall lines carved by hands long dead. They aligned perfectly. "This is it," she whispered. Rowan laid a palm on the stone. It felt cold, almost damp, though no water had touched it in centuries. He pressed harder, and a seam shifted. With a groan like a dying bull, a slab of rock slid aside, revealing a stairway spiraling down into black. Eliza shivered. This wasn't built by ranchers or miners. Padre Cruz clutched his cross. It was built by those who feared what they could not destroy. Rowan struck a match, lighting a torch. Shadows jumped against the canyon walls. "We came for truth. Let's see it." They descended, the air thick and stale. The torch sputtered, as if starved. The stairwell widened into a cavern, and there, beneath the earth, they found what had been hidden. Rows of wooden coffers stacked like cordwood, each branded with the serpent and star emblem. Keeley's breath caught. Ledgers weren't the only thing buried. She ran her hand across one coffin's lid. These were people, families. 2 rivers knelt, pressing a palm to the dirt. Taken, forced to sign. Those who refused, placed here. Eliza covered her mouth. God help us. Rowan forced one lid open. Inside lay bones, but not dry as he expected. The skeleton wore chains, the metal black with rust, but the smell was wrong, sharp, metallic, fresh, as if the grave had not finished its work. Padre Cruz staggered back. This is sacrilege. A voice echoed through the cavern, mocking. Sacrilege, Padre? No. This is commerce. Boone stepped from the shadows, rifle cradled in his arms. His grin cut the dark. Welcome to the mouth, Creed. You brought the ledger, I trust. Rowan raised his torch high. You knew all this was down here. Of course, Boone said. But knowing isn't enough. You need proof. You need the law. His gaze slid to Keeley. And you need someone with a memory sharp enough to make it stick. Rowan's hand hovered near his revolver. You want the ledger. Why? Boone shrugged. Because it tells the story. And stories are power. With this one, I can drag Sheriff Black and Silas Vane into the light, burn their empire down to ash. Eliza spat. And leave yourself standing on the ruins. Boone's grin widened. Naturally. Before Rowan could answer, the stairwell behind them shook with heavy boots. A second torch flared, and Sheriff Amos Black entered, revolver drawn. Silas Vane followed, slick smile intact, eyes hungry. Step aside, Boone, Black ordered. That ledger belongs to me. Boone cocked his rifle. Try and take it. The cavern filled with the sound of cocked hammers, and the quickening breath of those who knew lead was seconds away. Keeley's hand slipped to her skirt pocket, brushing the token. Its numbers glowed faintly in the torchlight, as though alive. She realized suddenly it wasn't just coordinates. It was a key. 2 rivers caught her glance, nodding once, as if he knew. Sheriff Black's voice cut the air. Creed, hand me the ledger now, and maybe I let your land alone. Rowan's voice was steady, but his blood thundered. You've taken enough land. The ledger stays with me. Silas sneered. Then you'll all stay down here, in coffins beside the others. Boone laughed, stepping back, raising his rifle. Looks like the mouth's about to feed again. The cavern erupted as the first gunshot roared, fire flashing against stone. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. Smoke and powder filled the cavern in a tight, choking cloud. Figures moved like ghosts, flickers of coat and hat, faces washed in torchlight. Rowan Creed kept low, the ledger thudding against his thigh like a trapped heart. Each shot dimmed into echoes that chased themselves down the stone corridors. A bullet nicked a coffer's lid, and splinters flew like pale insects. 2 rivers darted behind a stack, then rolled, bringing his own pistol up with the silence of a river snapping a reed. Eliza plunged forward with the courage of someone who'd seen too much fire to fear another. She slammed into Boone's flank, knocking him sideways. The rifle spun from his grasp and clanged against stone. Boone hissed, scrambling for the weapon, but Keeley was quicker. She lunged, sweeping the rifle free, and dropping to her knees to wrestle it toward safety. Her hands shook, but her jaw was iron. "Keep them off the exit," she yelled. "Don't let them drag us deeper." Sheriff Black fired from the stairwell, steady as a man with everything to lose. Silas Vane lurked nearer the coffers, pistol smoking, eyes wide with a terror that changed the lines of his face. For the first time since they'd met him, he looked small. Rowan rode the chaos like a man on spooked horse. He fired low to pin Black behind a bulwark of stone. He could see now the brass token in Keeley's hand, its numbers faint with the torchlight like a code whispered back from the stones themselves. His fingers ached to trace them, to understand how bronze could make men tremble. 2 rivers rounded on Silas in a sudden, fluid motion. The tracker's knife flashed and bit into business record and sleeve alike. Silas gasped, more from humiliation than pain, and dropped the pistol. He clutched his arm as if clutching at his empire. Boone rolled to his feet, fury in his eyes. "You think you can steal my revenge with muscle?" he spat. "I remember every face that signed away a life. I remember every handshake with a dirty palm. This ledger is justice." Padre Cruz shouted over the shots, voice raw. "Stop this carnage! We dig graves for those already in them if we keep killing now." Rowan's world narrowed to breath and ledger, and the taste of iron at the back of his tongue. He could feel the enormity of the cavern pressing like an accusation. The coffers, so many, stared back with their branded lids, as if the town's sins had stacked themselves into a barricade. A shout rose from the stairwell, different, smaller, a child's high voice cutting clean through the chaos. "Mama!" All heads snapped toward the sound. A figure appeared on the steps, half hidden in shadow. A boy, 9 or 10, dusted with the same desert as the rest of them. His eyes were huge, wet, and fixed on Sheriff Black as if the man were carved from the same wood as the ledger. "Tom?" Keeley whispered, because she recognized the boy from the schoolhouse roll. "Tom Moran?" Silas swore, face draining. Two Rivers tightened his grip on the throat of his pistol. Rowan's throat closed. The boy's arrival fractured something taut in the room. Sheriff Black's face collapsed into an expression that was neither anger nor fear, but a resignation that made his shoulders droop. He stepped forward, holster empty now, and the cavern seemed to inhale around him. "Tom," he said, lower than anyone expected. "You shouldn't." The boy's small voice was steady. "They said there'd be cakes at the meeting," he said, and then the truth spilled from him without the shame of restraint. "They said my daddy would sign and come home. They took him to the mission, and then he was not there." Silence fell like a hand. Even the ricocheting echoes seemed to stop in their tracks. Keeley pressed the rifle hard into her lap, knuckles white. Her eyes found the ledger, and then the boy, and something that had been a question hardened into a blade. Tom stepped closer, looking at the coffers as if they might stand and speak. "They put my daddy in one of those," he said simply. And the room changed, shifted into a place where children measured sins in the same way they measured height. Sheriff Black shut his eyes once, shut them as if to hold back a tide. When he opened them, they were not the sheriff's eyes, but a man's whose hands had been used to signing papers and not seeing who they served. "This is not how it was supposed to be," he said. "They promised order. They promised protection." Boone's laugh was broken now, smacking of a man who had fed on his own hate for so long it had started to curdle. "Promises drown when the river runs with gold," he said. "Your name's on the tokens, Sheriff. Your hand wrote the lines that moved land. You stood in songs when families were carried under the desert sand." Black took a step toward the stack of coffers. "We thought—" His voice failed, and the next words were a whisper that the stone itself might have heard. "We thought we were saving the town." Rowan felt his resolve loosen, unspooling like a rope burned at the end. "Saving it how?" he demanded. "By lying? By burying people where the sky can't see them?" Silas moved as if to counter, but Two Rivers blocked him with a flat hand across the chest. The tracker's face was a mask. "You marked yourself in bronze, Silas. You signed for every parcel. We have names now. We can take them to the land office. We can tear down their claims." Keeley rocked back, suddenly pale. "The ledger, if we take it out, if we show it," her voice broke, "will it change anything? Or just make men with badges and men with pockets swap places?" Padre Cruz dropped to his knees again, whispering faster, as if speed could stitch a wound. "Lord, grant us mercy." The cavern trembled beneath them. At first they blamed it on the rifle fire, the anger, the shifting of men, but the tremor grew, rhythmic and ancient, and the torch flames stretched in unison, leaning toward a single spot in the stone floor. A crack split the earth, a line that ran from one end of the cavern to the other, cutting through stacked coffers like a knife through leather. Dust poured from the seam, and a cold wind rose from beneath, smelling not of soil or rot, but of iron and old rain. From the fissure crawled something that made the air itself recoil. A hand, or what had once been a hand, wrapped in leather and chain, reaching with a slow, certain hunger. The fingers opened, revealing a token clutched in brittle grasp, the same serpent and star, but scored with time. The boy screamed. Sheriff Black staggered back as if struck. Boone dropped to his knees, eyes wet with something that looked dangerously like regret. Rowan's fingers closed around the ledger until his knuckles whitened, and from the depths beneath the stone a voice rose older than the men in the cavern. It spoke not words but a sound that shaped itself into one idea. The town had not finished paying. The debt demanded collection. The torch went out. The cavern plunged black. Somewhere in the dark, something began to move. The dark was total. Breathing seemed louder than gunfire. Rowan Creed groped for the torch, but only found splinters of wood where flame had died. The cavern's silence was broken by the scrape of chains moving across stone, slow, dragging, deliberate. "Eliza?" Rowan whispered. "I'm here," she answered from his left, her voice taut but steady. Keeley Moran's lantern flared weakly as she fumbled for a match. Sparks caught, glow trembling against the cavern walls. The faint light revealed the fissure widening, coffers tumbling into it one by one. Bones spilled, clattering like dice in a gambler's hand. Padre Cruz crossed himself, words tumbling fast. "Deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil." 2 Rivers crouched low, his ear pressed to the earth. "It wakes," he murmured. The mouth was never empty. It only slept. Then came the hand again, rising higher now, chain links glinting in the lantern light. Another hand followed, and between them a shape heaved upward, dragging itself from the crack. Not flesh, not ghost, something in between, a husk filled with the desert's memory. The boy, Tom Moran, clutched Keeley's skirt, his eyes wide with terror. Keeley forced her voice steady. "Stay behind me." She shoved the brass token into Rowan's palm. "If it's a key, then use it." Rowan turned the token over, its serpent and star catching light. Etched numbers pulsed faintly, as if alive. Boone saw it too and staggered forward, desperation cutting through his anger. "Give it to me, Creed. That's the only way to seal it again." "Seal what?" Eliza snapped, her revolver trembling in her hands. "The debt," Boone roared. The first settlers struck a bargain land for silence. The tokens were the contract, the coffers the collateral. Sheriff Black and Silas didn't start this, they just kept it fed. Rowan's gut twisted. "You mean all those families paid the price," Boone said, his voice breaking. "And the price was never done being collected." Sheriff Amos Black stood rigid, revolver forgotten at his side. His face was ashen. "We thought we were preserving order," he muttered. "But we were feeding the desert." The chained figure rose taller, dragging itself fully from the fissure. Its skull gleamed in the lantern glow, jaw half shattered, but its eyes burned with a dull, endless fire. It opened its mouth, and the sound that came was a chorus of every name written in the ledger. Keeley pressed her hands over Tom's ears, tears streaking her dust-stained face. Rowan shoved the token into the ledger's spine, forcing it between the pages where Black's signature lay. The metal seared hot, fusing into the parchment. For a moment, the cavern shook, the fisher's breath faltering. The chained figure screamed not with pain, but with hunger denied. It lunged toward Rowan, dragging a storm of dust. Eliza fired, the crack splitting the air, her bullet sparking off the chain. Boone raised his rifle, shooting into the thing's chest, though it didn't bleed. 2 Rivers hurled his knife, the blade sinking between its ribs with a hollow thud. Still it came, relentless. Rowan braced the ledger against his chest, holding it like a shield. "If it wants debt, then let it take mine." The creature's hand slammed into him, chains wrapping tight around his arms. The ledger glowed, pages burning from the inside, names searing into flame. Rowan's vision blurred as the fire crawled into his skin, burning but not consuming. He heard the voice again, deep as bedrock. "One life for all. The debt can end." Rowan staggered, half crushed, but he bared his teeth. "Not mine, not theirs. Take what you're owed from those who made the bargain." He shoved the ledger forward, straight into Sheriff Black's chest. The sheriff gasped, eyes wide as the flames leapt from Rowan into him. Chains recoiled, wrapping around Black instead. His scream shook the cavern, a cry of man and ghost together, until both were dragged into the fissure. The ground slammed shut like a tomb. Silence returned. Dust fell in slow rain. The coffers lay shattered, their bones spilled free, unchained. The cavern stank of iron and smoke, but the fissure was gone. Rowan dropped to his knees, breath ragged, his arms seared but alive. Eliza caught him, holding him upright. Keeley sobbed quietly, clutching Tom. Padre Cruz whispered prayers of absolution for a man already beyond reach. Boone leaned on his rifle, eyes hollow. "Black's gone. The debt's paid. But don't fool yourselves, the desert remembers. It always does." Rowan stared at the ledger's ashes, glowing faintly in the dust. The serpent and star emblem was gone. Only charred pages remained, names burned away into silence. Above them, dawn broke brighter. But the air carried no relief, only the uneasy hush of a town that had lost its sheriff, its secrets cracked open, and its soul still unsettled. The ride back to town was silent. Horses' hooves drummed against the desert floor, echoing like muffled gunshots. Rowan Creed rode slumped in the saddle, burns striping his forearms, though his eyes stayed hard on the horizon. Eliza Thorn stayed close, one hand never straying far from him, as if she could hold his weight with will alone. Keeley Moran cradled young Tom before her in the saddle, the boy's head pressed against her chest. His eyes were shut, but not with sleep. He clung to silence, as if afraid to speak might wake the horrors beneath the stone again. Padre Cruz rode behind, cross dangling at his chest, lips moving in prayers too quiet for the desert to hear. 2 rivers ranged at the flank, his gaze scanning every ridge and shadow, knowing the land had not forgotten what they had done. Boone rode at the rear, rifle strapped across his back, eyes on the dust cloud rising from their trail. He had not spoken since the fissure closed. The swagger was gone. In its place rode a man hollowed out by the echo of chains. The town of Dusthaven came into view, its rooftops etched against the pale dawn, but it did not look the same. Windows shuttered, doors bolted, as though the people inside already sensed the sheriff would not return. They dismounted in front of the Golden Star. The saloon's skeleton walls stood crooked against the morning light, blackened timber still stinking faintly of smoke. Rowan tied his reins slow, deliberate, as though every knot might anchor him to the earth. Keeley slid down with Tom, her voice gentle. "Go to the schoolhouse, love. Wait for me there." The boy hesitated, then nodded and darted down the street, small feet kicking dust. Inside the saloon, Silas Vane was waiting. His coat was spotless, his smile carefully stitched, but his eyes were rimmed red. He poured himself whiskey, the glass shaking faintly as he raised it. "You came back," he said, voice like brittle paper. Without Black, Rowan stepped forward, the ledger's ashes wrapped in cloth and strapped to his belt. "Black's gone. The ledger's gone with him." Silas's smile twitched. "Then it's just my word against yours. Boone's word means nothing. Yours even less." Boone's voice cut through like a knife. "My word's enough to burn you, Vane. I've carried it long enough, and I don't mind dying to see it spill." Eliza slammed her palm against the bar. "Try it, Silas. See if anyone listens to you over coffins and chains." Silas's mask cracked. He gripped the bar, knuckles pale. "You don't understand. Without order, without deals, this town dies. The cattle routes dry, the rails bypass us. We vanish into sand." 2 rivers stepped into the room, his shadow stretching across the floorboards. "Better to vanish honest than live on graves." Silas's hand drifted to his pistol. "You think you can scare me into ruin?" Rowan's revolver cleared leather before the thought finished. He leveled it steady. You're already ruined, Silas. The town just doesn't know it yet. The saloon doors creaked. Keeley entered, lantern in hand, her voice carrying. The people will know. Every name from that ledger is written in my memory. I'll tell it. I'll teach it. You can't bury it again. For the first time, Silas looked afraid. Truly afraid. His eyes darted to Boone, then to Rowan, then to the street beyond where townsfolk had begun gathering, drawn by whispers. Boone leaned against a beam, a half-smile curling. "Looks like your audience has arrived." Faces pressed to windows, boots shuffled in the dust. Murmurs swelled questions about the sheriff, about the ranches, about the names no one wanted to remember. Silas's pistol hand trembled. "You'll kill the town," he spat. Rowan's voice cut like steel. "No, Silas, the town was already dying. We're just tearing the rot into daylight." The door behind them slammed open. Dozens of townsfolk crowded in, eyes fierce with hunger for answers. Keeley raised her lantern high, casting light across the ash-wrapped bundle on Rowan's belt. "This town was built on blood and false promises," she declared. "But no more. We know the truth now." Gasps rippled. Silas backed against the bar, sweat beading his temple. Rowan leveled his revolver one final time. "You've got a choice, Silas. Stand trial before the people, or run into the desert and let it claim you." Silas's breath hitched, eyes darting toward the door. Boone's grin widened, waiting for the decision. Eliza's finger rested near her trigger, calm as stone. The saloon trembled not with gunfire, but with the sound of voices rising outside. The town was no longer blind, and Silas Vane was no longer untouchable. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. Silas Vane's glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the barroom floor. The crowd pressed tighter through the swinging doors, their whispers rising into a storm. Farmers, shopkeepers, mothers with children clinging to their skirts. They filled the Golden Star's charred shell until it seemed the walls might bow with their weight. Rowan Creed kept his revolver leveled, but his eyes searched Silas's face. The man who once wore velvet smiles now looked cornered, stripped of polish. "Trial?" Silas scoffed, voice fraying. "You think these people understand law? They'll string me up like a thief and call it justice." Boone barked a laugh from his shadowed corner. "Maybe that's exactly what they should do." The murmur of the crowd swelled. A ranch hand shouted, "We lost our land to your papers, Vane." A woman cried, "My brother never came home from the mission after signing." Keeley Moran stepped forward, lantern high, her voice ringing above the uproar. "Your names are in the ledger, every stolen acre, every buried soul. We may not have the pages, but I have the memory, and I will speak it, line by line, until this town knows who you are." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eliza Thorn's hand rested steady on Rowan's shoulder, her gaze locked on Silas. "You hear that? The desert keeps no secrets now." Silas's hand twitched near his pistol. For a moment the room braced for gunfire. Rowan steadied his aim, finger brushing the trigger. Then Silas faltered, his shoulders slumping. "You'll kill Dusthaven," he rasped. "Without me, the cattle will bypass, the rails will ride elsewhere. All that will remain is sand and ghosts." Two Rivers spoke, his voice quiet but cutting. "Better sand than chains, better ghosts than lies." The crowd roared its agreement. Boone pushed off the beam, striding closer, eyes gleaming. "What's it going to be, Vane? Face the people or ride until the desert swallows you?" Silas looked around, sweat gleaming on his brow. The townsfolk pressed closer, faces hard. No escape in their eyes, no refuge in law, only judgment. He bolted. In a flash, Silas lunged through the crowd, shoving bodies aside, pistol flashing in the morning light. Rowan fired. The bullet struck wood inches from Silas's arm, stopping him dead. The crowd surged, dragging him down. Boots and fists rained until he lay gasping, pinned by the very people he once ruled. Rowan lowered his revolver. The town had chosen its verdict. Eliza's voice carried above the chaos. "Let him stand before us all. Let the truth be told." Keeley nodded, lantern blazing. "And I'll tell it. Every name, every theft. The children of Dusthaven will grow up knowing the price their parents paid." Boone watched it all with a crooked grin. "Never thought I'd see the day. Maybe this town still has teeth." Rowan looked at him sharply. "And you? You had your part in this." Boone's grin faltered, just a shade. "I fed the fire, sure, but I didn't strike the first spark. That ledger belonged to Black, to Vane, to men who thought they could trade lives for law." He leaned close, voice low. "But don't fool yourself, Creed. You held it too. You felt what it asked. That kind of debt don't vanish easy." Rowan's burned arms ached with phantom heat. He clenched his jaw, saying nothing. Padre Cruz lifted his cross, trembling. "The sheriff is gone. The law is broken. But perhaps God will give us a new path." The crowd slowly released Silas, dragging him to his knees in the dirt. Dusthaven's people stood taller now, the weight of fear replaced by the fire of reckoning. Rowan stepped forward, voice carrying like a verdict. "This town belongs to its people, not to papers, not to coffers, not to men who hide behind walls. From this day on, Dusthaven stands free." A cheer broke loose, raw and fierce, echoing across the street. Silas Vane, bound and beaten, lowered his head. Boone smirked, but his eyes flicked toward the horizon, where the desert shimmered with heat. And Rowan felt it too, that uneasy sense that the ground beneath them still remembered every chain, every name. Dusthaven was free, but freedom carried shadows, and the desert never truly forgot. Dusthaven awoke different the next morning, where once the sheriff's badge had ruled and Silas Vane's purse had dictated law. Now the people stirred with voices unchained. Farmers patched fences that had never been theirs, now reclaimed. Mothers scrubbed stoops, their children wide-eyed at a town that felt strangely theirs for the first time. Yet, beneath the new day's brightness, shadows clung. Rowan Creed stood at the edge of his ranch, surveying the land his father left him. Burned scars crossed the earth where Boone's threats had promised fire, but the house still stood. Eliza Thorn leaned on the fence post beside him, arms folded. "It's quiet," she said, voice wary. "Too quiet." Rowan nodded. "Silas may be bound, but Boone still walks free, and I don't trust silence in this desert." Keeley Moran arrived on horseback, dust streaking her skirt, Tom riding behind her. She dismounted, eyes alight. "The townsfolk want to hold a gathering tonight. A reckoning, they're calling it. They want me to read every name I remember from the ledger." Eliza glanced at Rowan. "That'll stir more ghosts than it lays to rest." Keeley's chin lifted. Ghosts deserve to be heard. 2 rivers emerged from the mesquite, carrying a bundle wrapped in deer hide. He laid it on the fence and peeled back the cloth. Inside gleamed the brass token Boone had left behind, the one the desert hadn't swallowed. "This still breathes," he said simply. "It will call more men like him." Padre Cruz approached, his face drawn and weary. "Then let us sanctify it. Cast it into fire. Cleanse it before it poisons more souls." Rowan picked up the token. It pulsed warm in his palm, as if the metal remembered blood. He closed his fist tight. "No, we keep it. Proof matters more than prayers now." A voice drifted from the ridge. "Proof is useless without power." Boone sat astride his horse, rifle across his lap, grin half-shadowed by the Sunday. He rode down slow, the air thickening with his presence. Eliza's hand went to her revolver. "You've got a nerve showing your face here." Boone tipped his hat. "I've got more than nerve. I've got unfinished business. Vane's trussed up, Black's gone to the dirt, and Creed here holds the only key that matters. That token belongs with me." Rowan stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "You think you can ride in and claim it after what you stirred? After what you left in that cavern?" Boone's grin sharpened. "I didn't stir it. I revealed it. And it ain't finished with us. You felt it, Creed, the way the ledger burned in your hands. You think that ends just because a sheriff got dragged below? Keeley held Tom close, her voice trembling but fierce. You're wrong. The debt's been paid. Boone's eyes glinted. Debts don't vanish. They change hands. And I'll see this one through. Rowan raised the token high so the morning light struck it. You want it, Boone? Then take it in front of them. He nodded toward the town gathering in the distance, faces already turning their way. Let Dusthaven decide who carries this curse. The townsfolk drew nearer, whispers rippling through the crowd. Boone's grin faltered, then returned like a blade catching light. Careful, Creed. You put choice in the hands of a mob, and you'll see justice turn to another set of chains. Rowan's voice cut clean. Better their chains than yours. The crowd closed in, restless, hungry for truth. Boone's horse shifted beneath him, sensing the storm brewing. The desert wind carried the smell of heat and dust, and with it, the memory of chains rattling beneath the earth. Boone pointed his rifle skyward, firing once. The crack split the morning air, silencing the town. His grin widened, daring them all. Then let Dusthaven choose, he said. Me or him. The token gleamed in Rowan's fist, heavy as fate. The people's eyes burned between the two men, and the desert itself seemed to lean in, waiting for their answer. The silence that followed Boone's challenge stretched tight as a drawn rope. Dusthaven's people stood in a half-circle, their faces sunburned, eyes sharp, waiting. Rowan Creed held the brass token in his fist, its weight like a stone sinking deeper into his chest. Boone sat tall in the saddle, rifle across his knees, his grin daring anyone to deny him. I speak for the truth buried in your walls, he called out. I speak for every soul traded like cattle. Give me the token, and I'll burn the last of your chains. Rowan's voice came low but steady. Or you'll bind this town to your own brand of justice. Boone's justice, blood for blood, hate for hate, the crowd murmured. Eliza Thorn stepped forward, her voice sharp as a spur. This town's had enough of men making themselves kings. Dusthaven belongs to its people now. Keeley Moran raised her lantern high. I remember every name in the ledger, every farm, every stolen acre. Boone doesn't need the token to tell the story, we already have it. We'll keep it alive without him. Boone's grin faltered, then hardened. You think memory's enough? Men forget. Dust buries. Only fear keeps history breathing. Two rivers moved closer, his shadow stretching across the dust. Fear built your empire. It will not build ours. The crowd pressed tighter, mutters turning to voices. No more secrets. No more coffers. The truth belongs to us. Padre Cruz lifted his cross. The desert took the sheriff. Let us take the rest. Burn the token. End the cycle. Boone's eyes flared. No. He raised his rifle, leveling it at Rowan. Hand it over, or Dusthaven bleeds again. Rowan opened his hand. The brass token gleamed in the sunday, every eye fixed on it. Then, slow and sure, he tossed it into the waiting fire pit behind him. Flames leapt, swallowing metal. The serpent and star hissed, melting into ash. Boone's face twisted, fury breaking his mask. He spurred his horse, charging through the crowd. But Dusthaven had found its teeth. Hands grabbed, rifles lifted, and a dozen townsfolk dragged him from the saddle. Boone thrashed, cursed, but their grip held. Rowan holstered his revolver, his voice carrying above the chaos. The sheriff's gone. Vane will stand trial. Boone will answer for his crimes. But the desert's curse ends here. No more bargains, no more buried debts. The crowd roared, a sound raw and cleansing, echoing down the street. For the first time, Dusthaven's voices rang louder than its ghosts. Eliza stepped to Rowan's side, her hand brushing his burned arm. Keeley held Tom close, whispering comfort. Two Rivers watched the fire with wary eyes, as if waiting to see whether it truly held the curse down. Padre Cruz bowed his head, murmuring a final prayer. As Boone was dragged away in chains not of his making, the flames died to embers. The token was gone. Rowan looked across Dusthaven, its faces lifted, its fears burned away. He knew the desert never forgot, but perhaps, for once, it would forgive. He pulled his hat low and whispered to Eliza, "We've given them a chance. That's all any town gets." And with the wind carrying the ashes of the past into the horizon, Dusthaven began again. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West.